you today. Give me just 1 second to share just this portion of my screen, and then we will get started. All right, so today I thought we would talk about using formative assessments in across all of the different arts areas. And I picked this topic because I was looking back over all of the feedback forms from our past sessions, and this is one that a lot of people really asked for. But it totally goes beyond that. Even though that's kind of what I'll focus on today, I think that all of the ideas that we're going to be talking about could be used in your daily lessons and again across all of the different arts forms. Um, Sometimes I wish I could meet with you separately because I know I could make it even more specific for our drama teachers or our music teachers. But I think that all of our ideas today can cross all of these. Before we start, I was wondering if you would pop something in the chat box for me, please. Um, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being, I have no clue what you're talking about. 3 being, okay, I've dabbled in that a little bit, and with 5 being, I use this tool all the time. So on a scale of 1 to 5, if you could tell me in the chat how you feel about using Flip, formerly known as Flipgrid. We'll start there. I even see some zeros in here, and that's okay too. Maybe you've never ever used it before. Thank you. And thank you all for being completely honest. This just helps me guide our session today. Give you just one more second to answer that one. Great. And our second one is same question on scale of 1 to 5. How do you feel about using Padlet? I know we've talked about both of these before in previous sessions. All right, and while you're popping those in there, I'm going to put our link to our presentation in the chat so that you'll have access to that as well. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and get started. So the tools I picked today, I wanted you to us to think about how technology could inform formative assessments in the arts, because we have the capacity today to engage students in a way that we couldn't years ago. When I was in the related arts classroom years ago, none of this existed. So the only way I had to assess my students was number one, what they wrote on paper, or number two, their performance or their products. And so using technology to help us inform our formative assessments can really help us truly see what our students know. It can help us and them identify their strengths and weaknesses. It can help them to build skills. It can help us refine learning and reteaching, and it can just help guide our teaching as well. So as always, I encourage you, please unmute anytime. Please use that chat box. I don't like to talk at you. I can't wait to see you in person again one day because I truly want this to be a conversation. So hopefully you were able to open up our slides. They don't make a whole lot of sense on their own, but hopefully they'll be there to serve as a reminder. So just as a quick definition of formative assessment, I know you know what that means, but I really wanted to focus on this today. It's a way to monitor student learning to provide, and this is the important part, ongoing feedback. And this can be used by both instructors to improve their teaching and by students to improve their learning. So we're not just talking about the grade we can write in a grade book, but we're talking about um, learning, and that's what assessment should be. It can be and should be a moment of learning. So today's not about the tools. Okay, I'm not going to be teaching you how to use Flip. I will go back and give a brief overview, or how to use Padlet, or how to use Canva, or Google Docs, which you'll see these are the tools we're going to be using today. But we're going to be talking about ways you can use those to assess your students. And as always, do have links and resources that I will provide you with those tutorials if you need them as well. So the first one that I want to talk about is students' questions. And this is one of my favorite ways. And you'll notice I started that off with you today. I asked, what was your comfort level with using these tools? And just by looking, I saw lots of twos and threes. And so that quickly let me know the direction that our session needed to go today. But I like letting students ask the questions. And you can tell by this image that I gave my students a blank Padlet, and I'll go back and review that in a moment. But I gave them a blank Padlet and I wanted them to ask questions. So we had an assignment, and I wanted them to ask questions that they still had during that assignment. And you want to ask questions often and repetitively. And then I had my students go in and read all of the questions, and they were able to up or down vote it. So upvote if it was another question that they had or a question that was on their mind as well. So this lets me know that when I start my next lesson, the ones that got a lot of the thumbs up is where I would start. Now, I definitely will try to answer all of those questions during a session, but this is just a quick way to let me know what questions everyone has, or maybe something that I should have retaught. So I did use Padlet for this. So I'm just going to jump into Padlet for just a moment. Just as a reminder, Padlet is a free tool. And with the free tool, you have up to 3 active Padlets at a time. So I would just come in and say, I'm going to make a Padlet. And a Padlet is just like a giant digital sticky board. I love how Padlet has recently upgraded their site, and they now have given us all of these different options, which we'll explore some of these today. For example, I can have an art showcase or a blog, and this kind of just gives me a basic template to start with. So I'm just going to pick shelf for now. And this went ahead and divided this into sections. When I go into my settings, I have the option to jump down and I can copy the link to my Padlet, and then I can share that out with my students, allowing anyone to jump on and collaborate on my board. And we're going to practice some of these throughout our session as well. But when the students are ready, all they have to do is click the plus sign, and then they are able to add their question here as well. Quick reminder, students can add more than just a question, or teachers. They can upload files, they can upload camera or just an image. They can take a video or a picture. They can just record audio. So this is a great way. I noticed from your session schedule that you've been working with Jason and some podcasting. This is a great way if you don't have access to fancy equipment. Students can come in and just use this audio recorder as well. So you can have your students respond to you in any way. Maybe they want to just type. Maybe they want to record their voice. Maybe they want to record a video. Maybe they want to use AI to generate an image for them. Maybe they want to upload a file. I love the student choice we have here. So that is Padlet in a nutshell. It's very easy just to come in and create my board and then just share this with my students. And then they can collaborate with me. And I'll come back to that. I just wanted to give a brief overview since I was talking about Padlet here. Again, this is just a quick way to assess my students where their thinking is and where their understanding is, and then I can let that guide my teaching. So now let's talk about the big ways of assessment, formative assessment. So the first one I want to share with you today is peer-to-peer assessment. And this empowers students to voice their opinions, right? And to build those skills. And maybe you use these words or maybe you choose not to, but to provide constructive criticism or learn how to take constructive criticism and feedback. Because assessments don't have to be a grade, remember, this is to help us show growth. So let's look at some examples of peer-to-peer feedback. The first one, I was using Flip, and I'll jump back into Flip in a moment and just give you a brief overview of that as well. But this is an exercise that I use with my drama students weekly. So right now we are working on the production of Little Mermaid. And so I have my students come in and I try to give them very clear and concise directions. And maybe this one needs to be a little more clear, but they have done this so many times by this point. We do this weekly. So, what I ask my students to do is I give them a scene each week, and then I have them read their lines silently, first of all. And then my prompt to them is to, before you even speak this out loud, take a highlighter, take a pencil, and I want you to underline or highlight which words do we need to focus on? Which words might you choose your intonation or you add excitement to, or maybe it needs to be slowed down. So I ask them to really dissect those lines, first of all. And then when they're ready to record, they're just going to click this record button. And I ask them to pause when it's another character's time to speak. And I'll tell you more about that in a second. Um, we'll watch a quick second.
Whoa, mermaid off the port bow. Ariel, how you doing, kid? Ah, geez, what a swim. More human stuff there. Hey, let me see. Wow. This is very, very special.
And I'll stop. I won't make you watch the whole thing right now. Hopefully you were able to hear that. But what students are doing, so many different lessons within this one activity. Number one, students are practicing fluency. They're practicing reading with expression. They're learning how to really develop their character. Number two, if you are familiar with Little Mermaid, this scene also we have Ariel and Sebastian that are along with Scuttle. So this gives them an opportunity to practice their lines back and forth. So Ariel can now jump on and watch Scuttle's lines, and they have a practice partner. So they're able to, even though they're not in the same room, they're able to practice their lines together. So that's the first part. I also have the students do this several days in a row, which we'll look at an example in a moment, but the students can truly see growth. And as a teacher, I can see growth to see how they started out to how this character will change the more times that they do this and the more times that they have to think about the understanding. So before we go any further, I want to jump into Flip and just do a quick reminder of what Flip looks like. Flip is owned by Microsoft, and students log in with either their Google or Microsoft account, whichever district you are. And I can start these different groups. And then when I'm ready, I can come in and add new topics. So think of your groups as being a classroom. Okay, so I can add all of my students to this group or to this classroom, and then I can go in and add these different topics or assignments. And again, I have full-length tutorials linked for you. This is just a quick overview. So this is going to be my question for the day. Maybe this time I want them to practice singing pages 3 through 6. And then I can come in and give them more descriptions. So I would type in much more detail, many more details that I'm typing here. I can also add images. I can add videos. I can record myself giving directions. So this is great for our younger students or maybe our English language, our EL students. You can do that as well so that they can listen to you talking and not just have to read. Again, trying to use our design principles and give them every opportunity. You can upload videos, you can add attachments or even YouTube videos. So maybe I want my students to watch a part of a performance first and then respond. So just knowing that that's an option. Another option I have is I can change the recording time. I usually leave this between 2 and 3 minutes. Who wants to come in and watch a video? That's 10 minutes long. I don't. But most importantly, it is a larger skill for our students to be able to summarize and to narrow that down. Once they get comfortable with using this media, they will talk forever. So know that you can provide up to 10 minutes of speaking time. I usually keep this around 2 or 3. Another important feature that you have is you can moderate this. I'm going to talk more about this later, but this is especially important for our teenagers because they do not want other people to see their videos. And until we teach them and guide them the way, you have the option to leave this where only you will see the videos until you choose to share them with that group of students. So just letting you know, you have the option to turn this on or off. There are more settings in here. I can come in and make this active or I can hide it. Or I can view only. So if it's past a due date and I only want students to be able to see it, you have those options. I can choose when it would start, when it would end. Um, you can allow students to be able to respond to each other or not, or allow them to like the videos or not. So these capabilities, all of these options you see are here for you. So when I'm finished with my options, I would just click post topic, and I'm now able to share this out. Or when students now come into my class or my topic, they will see all of their assignments for that activity. Okay, before I go on back to our examples, do you have any questions about setting up a flip or setting up a Padlet? We'll keep referring back to those, but those are just our quick overviews for the day. I'm practicing my wait time. I'm usually not very good about that because I want to fly through everything. Okay, I'll keep moving, but if you have questions about those, please ask, and I would be happy to come back and go through any detail. So moving back to this drama example, this can be used across any content. It doesn't just have to be theater, right? We can, sorry, let me back up a second. Think about this for our orchestra or our band students or our vocalists. They can come in and do the exact same thing. They can come and they can sing, they can play their instrument. This is a great way for them to practice. They can do it every single day. They can come back and they can watch it. Um, they can watch each other, since we're talking about peer feedback right now. And they could then leave comments on each other. And we'll talk more about how to teach that feedback in just a second. Remember, I was talking to you about all of those examples with our teenagers especially, because research has shown that our adolescents are very hypersensitive to criticism, right? Or they feel judged and they become self-conscious, and they sometimes feel very stressed out about this, or they feel, just very withdrawn and they don't want to do this type of activity. So we want to develop this culture of feedback for them. We want to help them learn um, how to create this safe environment where they feel comfortable sharing their ideas and sharing their productions. So teach this up front, because feedback is a process. We wanted all of our kids to feel valued and we want them to feel empowered. So we can do this through consistent modeling. So I would first show this to my students. I would teach them how I want them to respond. I would teach this through repetition, constantly doing the same activity until the students feel comfortable with this activity. So I love this. And then the more comfortable they feel, you're going to notice, just like our Little Mermaid example, they become over passionate and they're not afraid to perform. So, just wanted to share that with you. So, Flip has all of these amazing features built in, and I just wanted you to think about these. So when the students hit record, a lot of teachers turn this off. They're like, nope, you can't use filters, or yes, you have to show your face. But I am begging you to let your students do what they feel comfortable with. And first, for example, they can place themselves so that they're not in the center of the screen. They can be down in the corner, so they can choose the placement up here in the center. They can turn on these filters. Maybe they want to blur themselves out, like you can see I've done to myself in this example. Or maybe they just want the screen to be monochromatic, and that's fine too. Maybe they want to put a sticker, a headband on themselves, or a hat, and that's okay. I let them do whatever, just to start to feel comfortable with this. Um, Also, at the bottom, if you look, when students begin their recording, they have the option of choosing if are they going to record a video with their face, or do they just want it to be the audio? And that's important as well. You might get a different example if your students are doing a drama lesson or maybe a vocal lesson where you need to see their body arrangement, then you would want them to have the video on. But sometimes it's okay if they just want to do the audio recording, similar to a podcast. um, this is great, and I'm loving your comments. So Tony had mentioned that he's been using Flip for playing tests in band for years. I love that, Tony. If you have more to share about that, please do. We would love to hear that. And Kristen has used flipped sometimes to show that kids are practicing at home. And that's great too, because especially in a classroom, you can't let every kid come up and do every little piece at a time. So this is great for them to practice at home. And I love how Kristen also mentioned she had so many good laughs from their recordings, and they love to get creative, and they do. So uh, it's so much fun to see their reactions. Um, Another thing that students can do is they have the choice to add different backgrounds. Maybe your visual art students have created a painting and they want to show, or a sculpture, whatever the media is they're using that day. But if they have that in the background and they're now this little reporter in the bottom, they can show their artwork while they're talking about it. So I love that. It's a true art gallery by doing this. In case you didn't know, a newer feature too in the top right hand corner is that students can use a teleprompter. And so, what that lets them do is type the text in they want to say. And so they can kind of read that, but nobody would see that in their video. So, all of these options are just ways to just remind your students that they're there and let them kind of experiment until they feel comfortable with this. Um, Okay, sorry, it was frozen for a second. Just a couple of other examples is that when I'm doing choreography with students, whether it's in a dance class or if it's in a musical theater class, whatever it is, I could also use Flip for that. Maybe I can say in my directions today, I want you to create a dance showing the elements of space, time, and force, and it has to be a ABA pattern or whatever that what you would want that to look like. Or maybe it's just like this example where it's a weekly dance challenge. So just encouraging students to tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end. And each week they could focus on a specific era. So you can tell in this example, the teacher included a YouTube video, The Evolution of Dance, which is a great YouTube video. And they also included attachments. So remember, you can do that with Flip. So down at the bottom, there is a wakelet that the teacher made that has all these different resources that students can come in and explore before they record their own dance. Um, by the way, all of these are hyperlinked. So if you come in and click on one of these activities, it will, once you log in to Flip, it will open that up for you so that you can add this topic to your own group and you could edit it and it's a ready-made activity to use with your own students. So again, all of the activities are hyperlinked. So just click on them and it will open it up. So if you add the topic, you now have a ready-made activity to edit and use with your own kiddos. I think I have just another example. Oh, sure. So another thing that I like to do with my kiddos is asking them, maybe we're creating a tableau, or maybe it is just an activity where I want them to look at their performance. So they don't need any fancy equipment. They can just turn their Chromebook around and they can take photographs or they could take video. They could post it somewhere like a Padlet that we looked at earlier, or post it on Flip, and then other students can watch that. And maybe you give them a checklist like this one to answer, to go through. Did your facial expression clearly show the emotion, your character? Um, I have found if I give my students these guiding questions that I want them to talk about, then students are less likely to become insulted, if that's the right word. So we're learning to take that constructive criticism, right? How to be a better performer, whether it's in art or dance or drama or music, no matter what it is. We can learn to focus on these things. And if I give my students this checklist first, similar to a rubric, they know what I'm looking for, and they are more aware of that during their performance or during their recording. Another tip and trick with this, if you're not really sure what to ask your students, I generated this one with Gemini, which is Google's version of ChatGPT. So or you could do it in ChatGPT as well. You could go in, or Magic School, any of these AI generators, and you could say, you are a band teacher. Generate a list of 10 questions or 10 points for my students to use during a drama exercise on tableaus and using expression. So type any of these into those AI generators and they will give you that rubric or that list to start with, and then you can go in and edit those and make them your own. I do this before every performance. I've started taking photographs of my students during dress rehearsal, which is what you see here. This was a production of Mean Girls we did a few weeks ago. And I will put them all in a Padlet, and then I will have students come in and say, answer the questions of themselves first, and then have them do a peer-to-peer feedback and say, you know, or maybe give a glow or a grow. I really like how you are really show that you're taking a selfie here because your tongue is sticking out and your hand is up with your camera. So just having them like really reflect on these moments of performance. Remember, we couldn't do that years ago. This is another example of a rubric that was created by Gemini. And the teacher I was visiting last week, this was in an elementary classroom, and she was teaching the students to clap out a song. So they were clapping out rhythms. And what we did is we had students divide up into groups. And first of all, they practiced the rhythms, clapping them. And then we had them use their Chromebook and using Padlet. Um, to record themselves clapping out the rhythm and only to listen to it. So then they weren't judging each other, but they were listening and they're like, "Oh, I can hear we didn't get that rhythm right. So what can we do to fix that?" Okay, let's try that again. I can tell we need to count one Mississippi that rather than just counting so quickly or whatever it was. But by the students doing this and recording themselves and then going back and listening, they were able to give that feedback to each other, and by the end of the 50-minute class, they all had the song down perfectly when they came back together as a whole group. So I loved this quote from Jamie Cobbs, and I linked the article here. It was an Edutopia article, and it's an older article, but I really thought it was great, and it had a lot of relevant research in it. Is that kids who frequently draw and create podcasts or write fiction with the expectation that their peers will be consuming it, and who are then themselves expected to provide feedback, they are more likely to really think about their work and put their heart and their soul into their performance for you or into their product or into their work. And so, as she said, they feel more seen, heard, valued, and consequently engaged in their work. And I hope you see that with your students as well. If we give them these opportunities, don't wait until that concert, that choir concert, or that band concert, right? We need to let them start early with this feedback and to really grow and to shine. Um, in that article also is Dr. Caitlin Tucker, and I don't know if any of you have, sorry, Catlin Tucker. I've been doing a lot of studies with her over the past 2 years on blended learning, and I have linked her course here for you if you want to jump into that. But I love this peer feedback choice board. So with this, instead of having them answer all of those questions, she lets them pick which two do you want your audience to look at, or which two I want to pick the two pieces of feedback that I want my peers to watch for and give me feedback on. It could be one, it could be two, but we're teaching students to give that specific feedback. These other two examples, I just grabbed these off of Canva. So if you jump into Canva and search for Grow and Glow, this is my favorite way for students to give feedback because as we know, we always sandwich our feedback, right? We always start with something. I love how you used expression, or I loved how clear those notes were, or I loved how dark those pencil lines were to trace that object. So we're showing a glow first, and then something you could do next time or something you could try to make this even more outstanding is. So I really love those glow and grow moments. Another template I found off Canva is See, Think, Wonder. So what do you see? And students love this. My drama kiddos love this especially because they don't always think it's my fault. Sometimes I'm constantly giving those corrections instead of really letting them know that I see those choices that they're making. So this is a new type of feedback that I love to use: is see, think, wonder. And what do I think is happening? And then my wonder is that grow, right? Like I wonder what would happen if you tried this. And that students, this feedback really works well for me. I would love to hear about feedback techniques you use as well. So please pop those in the chat or unmute as well anytime. Our next one I wanted to talk about, so we've done peer assessment, but the next is the self-assessment, and this is where students really take ownership. This is the most powerful feedback that they're going to get, especially when we let them have this type of feedback, because they start to learn that my feedback as the teacher is not the only one that matters, right? I have the ability to provide feedback and to grow on my own. And so technology can really assist in self-assessment by letting students view their work, right? Otherwise, they won't see it unless they're standing in front of a mirror. And when students are standing in front of a mirror, we don't want them to be focusing on that. We want them to use their emotion and use their expression. So we really want them to be able to step back and look at their work. So again, jumping back to flip, because I love this. I told you a drama exercise earlier. This is one we use in dance. Students at SCAPA, which is School for the Creative and Performing Arts here in Lexington. When my daughter was a student there, this is a tool they used, and I really saw progress with her because they were to describe a skill. So the students got to pick the skill they wanted to work on for that week. And then they recorded themselves every day for the week, whether it was in dance or orchestra or band or drama or literary arts or visual arts. It didn't matter what it was. They would record that same one skill every day that week. So the student decided they were going to be working on their forte turns, and I'll show you. This was the day one. This was on Monday. Okay, kind of rough, right? But by Friday, and I won't make you watch the whole thing, but if you notice, Monday, it was okay. We had some single pirouettes there, right? But by Friday, just 4 days later, sure, there were still some stumbles, but if you notice, there was so much more power in those turns, right? They were so much cleaner, and she was even doing doubles and some triplets, even changing the arms and even holding a prop, a fan, right? I know this is a dance example, and I know you don't all teach dance, but I want you to think about how this same technique can be used in your content area. And I would love for you to just type that in the chat box right now. It doesn't matter what your content area is. Give me an idea of how this could be used in your classroom by letting your students start on Monday and do it for a whole week, focusing on one skill. And just thinking about how this student, maybe they're like still on Friday, they're like, oh, I'm still falling out of those turns, or maybe I still didn't hit that note, or I still don't quite have the value down as I'm drawing. But when they come back and look at it, hopefully they'll notice that growth. Yes, sight reading. That's a great example. I want to hear more. I want to hear more. Portraits. Yes. Oh, I love it. Keep on coming. Keep on coming. So Padlet, we were looking at Flip, but Padlet can do the exact same thing. And here's where I would encourage you to use the choice of tool that you like and that your students feel most comfortable with. And I love this. So Padlet, same idea. This was an orchestra session that the teacher, instead of just having them fill out a practice log, I practiced this Monday, I practiced this Tuesday, but now we can really see it. And again, this is not an aha moment or I caught you not practicing, but it really lets the students get the feedback. So they used Padlet and they clicked on the plus sign and they just did that audio recording. So this is the same way they would make a podcast. So not only is the audio here, but then look below. The students came in and they added a reflection. This was a middle school student, and so their reflections were kind of like, okay, I'm in a hurry. I'm just going to type it in there. But if you take a quick peek, they let me know what their struggles were. They let the teacher know. It got a little bit easier. It let them know themovers. I don't know what that is. I don't play the violin, but I could tell that was a skill that meant a lot to that student because they mentioned that, right? I like how I got a glimpse into their day that they don't tell anyone, but I took a nap and I woke up feeling energized, right? So they noticed their playing was better when they weren't so tired and they actually had time to focus. Um, they even got to play outside, and so they felt energized and they felt inspired. And so I loved this. And how often in a classroom do you get to just hear that one student? Maybe it's very often for you, but the orchestra I visited last week, there were over 100 kids in that classroom, and the teacher was trying so hard, and they were working on blended learning, and they were working with one group at a time, but the rest of the class was sitting passively, like just sitting there. But instead, this teacher was letting students go off to different parts of the room. And if you listen to these recordings, they're not always perfect. Some of them might have background noise, but the students were still getting to practice independently. So I loved that. And I love these comments. Please keep them coming. So we've looked at Padlet, we've looked at Flip, but it doesn't even have to be that extent at that extent. Google Docs is a very simple tool that we are all familiar with, and this is what an art teacher that I work with does. Um, she would just do a Google Doc and then she gives the students a checklist in it. So if you look at this example, very just quick, 4 questions. Does my drawing have an accurate shape? Is my shading smooth? Have I given my drawing an outline? Did I include enough detail? So all the student did that day is they held their drawing up to their webcam on their Chromebook. They snapped a picture and inserted it directly into this Google Doc. So it was a quick way for the students to reflect, but then also a way for the teacher to go through and see the students' work. So this is great for the students because as they upload the work, they can come in on a Google Doc and just go check, yep, I have an accurate shape. Uh-oh, I didn't finish blending that out. I need to go back and do that. So this self-assessment and being self-aware of the expectations is huge because your students won't even turn their work in, right? If they didn't meet all those expectations. So I love how just simple and quick this Google Doc is, but how effective it is with our students. And I especially loved this quote because we want our students to leave being articulate, right? And subject literate. So if you're wanting them to start to use those terminology, those vocabulary words from your lessons, require those as part of their journal entry for that day. Maybe they have to use the word um, accurate, or maybe they have to use the word shading, or maybe they have to use the word vibrato, or whatever terminology we want them to use. Let's go ahead and give them those opportunities to practice that. Ah, big. So I feel like we do such a great job of letting our students create their work. And then we say, okay, it's time for a formative assessment. Check, you did it. And then we move on, right? But that's not the point. It's not just checking off those boxes. So what I would challenge you to do is to, one appropriate, is when the students give this self-feedback, give them time for revision, right? So when they say, what can I do better next time? Or when they set these goals for themselves for next time, let's give them those chances to actually do that. It's just like the design thinking process when we come up with an idea and then we build a prototype and then we have to test it and then we have to go back and redesign. Same thing with any of our work. If they have time for revision, um, after that feedback, it's really important. And I feel like this is a step that we skip quite often. Okay, so our next one is so we have peer to peer, we have peer to or peer to self-assessment, and now we can talk about teacher to student. So this is when teachers can continuously see what's going on and make adjustments. But this isn't just for the outcome of the students. This is also for you, right? This is how I know as a teacher what I need to go back and to reteach or how to guide my learning. So a couple of examples of that, just letting, again, this is another flip example, is having my students after a performance, they can share that self-evaluation. So maybe they're sharing that performance with me, and then I can see where all of that are. And you know that all of these have crossovers, right? So it's the same ideas with students practicing those daily skills. I'm checking in. So all of these do crossover. This is just another example. Another one is that we can actually let students learn through these ideas as well. So, and I'll show more examples in a moment, but as we think about flipped learning or even blended learning, where students are working in different studios while you're working with one group, you as the teacher can be in multiple places at one time just by creating these activities. So maybe in my art class, I wanted my students to look at this painting, to go into this masterpiece, and then they could respond to the prompts. And so this way, instead of just one student raising their hand, I'm getting all of my students engaged in the process and in the learning. Again, I love Flip because if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, I can add in as many resources as I want and turn this into a true lesson. Another thing I like about Flip, wonder how many times I've said that today. I should have had you tally mark them. Is that this can be used on any device. So it can be used on Chromebooks, it can be used on cell phones or iPads. And so most of my students, especially if they're recording at home, they will just pick up their phone and record from here. And it's easy for me as a teacher as well to watch them on the go. So as you're sitting at soccer practice or sitting in your car this week, because it might be a little chilly, you could even go through and just take them with you and grade them and see these examples. This is just an elementary example, again, using Flip. Just another drama example. So I wanted to really share these with you just to get your brains thinking about how, even though this is a theater example, this could be used across any content area. Is that we want to give our students the opportunity to have these clear expectations and to know what to expect. And then they will have the opportunity to walk through these and have all the different resources, and then they can show me what they truly know. They may choose to do this individually, they may choose to do this in groups as well. So, with blended learning, this is when you as a teacher can become the facilitator. You're guiding the learning. You're not the dictator. So, you don't have to stand and tell them what to do. So, honestly, I could have 5 different lessons going on in my classroom at the exact same time. So, this is just an example. I want to jump over and show you that in Flip, if I click on my little icon in the top right hand corner, I have this option called Discovery. And Discovery is a curated section for educators, created by educators. So I can come in and see um, all of these different examples and I can divide them into subject area. For example, I can choose arts, I can choose technology, I can choose music, I can choose any of these topics. And then I can now go through and look through these and use any of these examples. And you can tell that while some of these are created by other educators and they have all been vetted, you will see other examples by companies we love and know, such as Wonderopolis or Novel Effect or even Carnegie Hall. So all of these have been developed for you, and you can just open these up, add this topic to your own flip, to your own groups, and edit them if you would like to. And they have already been created for you. I love that. Less work. A lot of them will even have premium content built into them. For example, some of the Carnegie Hall ones will take you into a backside or a backstage virtual field trip. So a lot of these have that. In this example, which is Draw a Bat with Emma Reynolds, you can actually, she will read the book to you. So this is a great way for students to be exposed to literature. And then she even gives a drawing lesson within this. So I love all of these that have already been built for you. Um, Here's just an art example, and this was one from Wonderopolis. And if you've never explored Wonderopolis, that's your homework assignment for tonight. Wonderopolis is just a quick site. When you go there, they have a wonder of the day, and it will be something with a video or something with a website. Usually, it always starts with an engaging question, so students always love those. When I was a library media specialist and my students were creating the daily news show, we built a segment just off of the wonder of the day. And it was great for them to be able to reference that and to develop a quick news story and share that with the rest of the school. But Flip now has incorporated with Wonderopolis, and they create these amazing activities for your students. And so many of them are arts related. So please explore that. This is another example, and I love this one. This is a lesson that was designed with Empatico. And so if you come into this, it's letting students help create a digital self-portrait and to share about their identity and to explore what they can learn about others through their artwork. So I love this. So students can go through and walk along with and create their own self-portrait. And then they have this virtual gallery where they can explore all of the self-portraits of their peers. And if you choose, remember, you can turn this on and off, but students have the opportunity to leave feedback for their peers and talk about those glows and those grows, and it's powerful. Just again, will not go through all of these, but just lots of different examples, and I hope one of them will inspire you in your classroom. So the last feedback is that I love how I can give my students a community space. So it's not just self feedback or peer feedback, but we can put our display their work proudly and ask for parents or grandparents or guardians or aunts and uncles. Um, so many of you have already heard my story about the student who, when the teacher published their digital book or their digital storytelling, and the grandparents from India saw it for the first time. They had never met their grandson face to face, but they were able to keep up with his work and give that feedback. And it makes me cry every time, and I'll never stop telling it. But we can build this space for teachers and students to share. So for example, this is when I always start off with every new cast I get is I have them jump on Flip, and we do this in person too, but I always have them do it on Flip too, is to share their name with a gesture. And then they type their name as a caption. And then, so it could be like, hi, my name is Kelly, right? And then, so my peers would jump in and watch my video, but then they have to say, hi, Kelly, my name is Amy. And then that train keeps going. Even though it's a very simple activity, think about how that could be used in literacy. So students could start to do storytelling where I could give the beginning sentence, the next student could add on, and then it's just a chain. So this is just reminding you that using that ability where students can comment to each other is powerful. Will you have to teach them how to do it? Absolutely, you do. We want to teach them that saying you suck is not what they should be typing. We want to teach them how to give feedback. They do not inherently know how to do that. So take that time. This is a reminder up front to teach those skills. Another community, and this is probably one of my favorite ways to use Padlet, is to create a showcase. So Padlet, when you jump on now and you say, I want to create a new one, a new Padlet, one of the options to have an art gallery. So it builds it for you. You can do this on your own, but it will build the template for you. So at the end of every lesson, again, just have your kiddos hold up their artwork. Take a quick screenshot and they can upload that here. I like the directions on the side because I loved this last one, is that just reminding students to view, appreciate, and comment on their peers' art contributions, fostering an environment of mutual respect and admiration. And I love that sentence. And I would like copy that and teach that to my kiddos, no matter what discipline you teach. This is great for all feedback. They all need to remember, build that trusted community. And so I didn't have the students put a lot of information here. Actually, this teacher did not have the students put a lot of information here. But what could you add? Maybe your students have to add a sentence about why they created this particular masterpiece. They could talk about the medium that they used. They could talk about the techniques that they used or the process that they had to do to complete this artwork. And again, this is not visual art specific. This could be everything. All of these, or thinking through all of these elements is so important. And again, you could leave on the ability to where students could comment or not. I love the art galleries. You could put a QR code on this. You could have it hanging in the hallway. You could put it on a website. You could send it out through Class Dojo or Infinite Campus. We can send that out to our students. So our last activity, and I hope you will be hands-on with me and jump in and do this. You can, if you're on our slide deck, you can either click on this image of the beach, which I wish we were all at, or you could scan this QR code and do this activity with your phone. But another type of feedback, formative feedback that I use, or assessment with my kiddos is what's clear and what's unclear. And I always end with this in some way. So what's clear? What was clear from today's lesson? Meaning everything we just talked about with our feedback session, or what's unclear. Or so you could use those words, or you could do this example that we have, which is a 3-2-1 summary. So what I would love for you to do is to jump on our Padlet and to click on the plus sign under 3 things you learned. And just quickly tell us 3 things you learned today, or 3 aha moments you had, maybe something that excited you from today. And I hope you can think of 3. And then you'll click on the plus sign and tell me 2 things you still want to know. What do you want to know about this? Is it a technique or a skill or a tutorial? Tell me something you would like to know. And our last one is to click on that plus sign and say 1 question you still have. Jeffrey, I love your partner in crime. We have a budding artist. And if you cannot, for some reason, get that to pop open, that's okay. We're not being graded, but what I would love for you to do is to put it in the chat so that we have feedback from everyone. And Jamie, thank you for sharing that direct link in the chat. That was so helpful. And I'm jumping on, and this is my aha moment because, or my catch-a moment, because I really want people to jump over. And this is how we do peer feedback as well, because we can learn from each other. And I know that you're also asked some of these questions in your feedback form, so feel free just to copy and paste those as well, so we don't have to duplicate. But this is a great strategy. I use this one at the end of every PD that I teach. And I've probably been using this one for the longest time in my career, because like I said, Padlet has been around. I've been using this for 14 years now. I love all the upgrades. Okay. I love your summary. I hope you will keep typing those in there even as we finish up today. But I would love to stop talking and just see if you have any questions or if you have any comments. I love the comments that you've already provided. These are great. I love how Robin mentioned a daily recording of photos of progress on visual art. I love how students can do this at home if they would like to. And I'm going to talk about some of these questions that you have. So do I think that band kids should be able to collaborate, or is it best to practice to keep the videos visible to just the teacher? And I see this both ways. So some of the band teachers I work with and the directors I work with, they do both depending on their kids. In the beginning, they usually allow the students just to keep that private. And then I have other directors that will allow the teachers to, that will allow the students to decide, yes, it's okay for you to make mine public, or no, I do not want you to make mine public. And I know that's a little bit more work for them to keep that moderation on or off. In the beginning, I keep it off and then I teach my students how to use feedback. But then, as much as possible, I love to be able to turn those on so that way students can learn to do the peer to peer feedback and give feedback to each other. Sometimes um, I think it's, sorry, I was reading the other questions and got distracted. Sometimes you could even let students work in small groups. So it could be a section at a time. Maybe it's the French horns that get to record together, or the clarinets that get to record together, or maybe it's a quartet of students that get to work together to listen back to the harmonies. So yes, I see it both ways, and I think you should do what works best for your students. I do not want to make them uncomfortable, but I do want them to learn that performance qualities. Um, so are these platforms hard to manage? They are not. They are, excuse me. As a matter of fact, I'll link those step-by-step tutorials. I thought Wendy had mentioned that you guys had been like burned out with Flip, so I didn't want to give too many tutorials, but I wanted just to show the overview. So I'll link those tutorials in here. But both of them are absolutely free. So you do not have to pay anything. Just remember with Padlet, you get 3 at a time. But what you can do with them is you can archive them out and then have 3 active at a time. You can also download the Padlets when you're finished with it as a PDF, or download that as a slideshow, and then you can reuse it. So again, I will never ever show you anything that costs money. As far as teaching students to do this, I don't ever teach students how to use Flip or Padlet. And I know you think I'm crazy. I don't. And I didn't teach you how to do this as a student today. I said jump on, right? And I said click the button, and that's all I give them. I might remind them that if they want to add the audio, to click in the bottom right hand corner at this pencil. And then depending on how I have it set up, telling them what to do. So I use both of these tools for students K through 12. Honestly, I use this. I work at the whole district, but like my drama students, for example, I start at age 4 and go up through adult. And so I use this with every single one of them. And I know it's hard for you as a teacher, especially when you have so many different classes that it gets overwhelming. Um, I promise you, if you just jump into Flip, it is very self-explanatory. If you would love a one-on-one tutorial, just email me and let's set up a time to Zoom. And I would be so happy to walk through this with you one-on-one to get you going and set up. And I know I have 2 minutes left. I know that you also remember, if you come into this gallery, you don't have to start from scratch. You can find ones that have already been created for you, and you can just reuse it and add it to your own. So that way you don't have to spend a lot of time setting these up. I love this last question, and then I'll be quiet. How to justify using more technology when they're trying to reduce their screen time. Please advocate for this. And I agree, we should reduce screen time. But what I would like to reduce screen time on are those skill and drill activities where students are put in front of a math game or a reading game. I won't name any names, but when they're made to sit there and just click buttons all day long. And I really want students to not just be consumers of technology, but if they're using technology to create, that's a whole other story. And so please continue to advocate for students being creators and not consumers. And if I was in presentation mode right now, I would do my mic drop on Canva, because that's, if we take away nothing else today, I hope that that's the one. So, and I'm sorry we ran out of time, but I wholeheartedly mean this. I am here. This is not just a one and done. If you have questions, please reach out to me. I am just an email away, and I would love to Zoom and be glad to work through any of this as well. I've made the best friends through Twitter. I didn't put that on here, but I'll stick it in here. I am just EdTech Kelly on Twitter, and please let's follow each other A lot of people have been asking for questions on Twitter, and I try to get on and answer that as well. And Courtney, I'm glad you mentioned Artsonia. It is a wonderful tool. A lot of in the families can purchase things for that. I'm I I think that that is a great product. Google Sites is, and we have a session coming up on that later on in this year. But Google Sites is my favorite way to develop digital portfolios as well. Doesn't have the purchasing, but I can show you ways around that too. I love Artsonia. It's great. I'll be quiet. I know I'm out of time. I'm sorry, Jamie.
No
I'm
problem at
sticking
all.
around if anybody has questions.
Are there any other questions for Kelly? I really love what you said about being creators with technology instead of just consumers. I know my own son has struggled so much with some of those programs, but I think if he was able to create things, he would be much more productive than just sitting and reading things and clicking buttons. So I really appreciate that comment. I agree with you totally.
Yay. I want to put it on a t-shirt.
Yes, for sure. There's definitely good types of screen time and bad types of screen time.
Absolutely.
I did drop the evaluation there in the chat. If you guys don't have any other questions, I hope everybody has a great evening, and I thank you guys for being here, and thank you so much, Kelly, for all the great resources.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Jamie. I'll jump out, but please yell if you need me for anything.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. I'll probably see you next week.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.